Thank you for chatting with Dread Central today. We really appreciate it. And congrats on the Severin film's release of All About Evil. How does it feel?
It feels amazing. Yeah, it's just really satisfying. And I have to say, specifically, like Severin Films has gone above and beyond, like with this thing.
Yeah.
Like when they approached me about doing the Blu-ray, I was kind of like, yeah, like we're working on getting it back out. I had already started talking with Sam Zimmerman at Shudder, so it just seemed like, okay, let's do this. And so Severin going above and beyond has been like a gift, because they do, they have a CD and a booklet and all this stuff. And this weekend I'm signing slip covers, and it's like, wow, this is just so lovely.
Very cool. So it's a fun movie, but it's a grotesque movie. I'm wondering, was there ever a film that really messed you up as a kid, especially bad? This is for both of you.
Go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah.
Jacob's Ladder.
That'll do it. That's a wild one.
Because I started seeing, horror films at a highly inappropriate age always. There wasn't much censorship in my home, so I was seeing like Carrie and The Exorcist and The Shining and all that at like 6. But I remember watching Jacob's Ladder, I think around 10 or 11. And it was really fucking with me on a like deep level. That's
Too early. Yeah. Too early.
Now one of my favorite films, of course, but anyway.
Have you seen the remake? Just curious.
No.
Me neither.
Oh, that's funny. I remember sneaking into a theater and watching Hellraiser, when it was theatrically released. And I was young. I was, I don't know. I don't even know what year it came out, but I feel like I was like 13, 12 or 13, 14, around there. And it just blew me away. It haunted me for years. And, I think I thought I was going into one thing because, of course, Pinhead was on the poster. And while Pinhead is amazing in the movie, just everything else that movie is about, just blew me away.
Yeah, it's all about Julia.
It is.
Frank and Julia.
The best wicked stepmother of all time.
Rooting for her.
Yeah.
So speaking of gory movies, the gore in this film is phenomenal. I'm wondering, how did you go about brainstorming some of those set pieces?
Well, I was really lucky that I got to work with Aurora Berger, who was our special effects makeup artist, who's gone on to do a lot of exciting things and continued to her star rises. But she was early. She was like early enough in her career that she had that sort of ambition to kind of she was like me, like we were kind of like, don't tell us no, when the producers would say, this isn't going to work. You can't do this. It's too expensive. Like, you're not going to be able to, no, you can't do this practically. We would be like, let's figure it out. So Aurora and I would call people and, figure out if we could make it happen. And so there's very little that got cut from the movie as far as practical effects, although there are some things that did get cut. To this day, I'm like, ugh, I wish it would have been this thing, but
That was my next question, was
did really?
Anything, what didn't make it?
Well, I mean, as far as the original script, and I'm not sure what version of the script Thomas saw, but probably Thomas saw a very early version because he was one of the first people to come on board. The fire at the end of the movie, was supposed to be much, much grander. And after Natasha gets pushed off the roof by, Thomas's mother, she was going to land, and the newscaster was supposed to, look over at her, be doing the newscaster, supposed to look over at her, and she was going to turn her head, like she was still alive, even though she was still crippled. And the marquee of the Victoria was supposed to detach from the front of the theater and then just crash down on top of her.
I love that.
And of course, the producers were like, you're not getting that.
Wow, it's still great. It was beautiful seeing Cassandra Peterson in this, and not just in a cameo. What was it like acting alongside her, Thomas?
Beyond a delight. I mean, I was starstruck because it's Elvira, for God's sake. But I don't know, she's just the kindest woman and so talented and so funny and sweet. And I think she was a bit out of her comfort zone, not being Elvira. And, So we were there for each other, but it was a very easy thing. And then I actually got to play her son, to actually play Elvira's son, Elric, on her show that came back like the following year, I think. And I've obviously seen her always at Peach's shows and things like that. And I just,
Yeah. Wow. Were there any other cameos or casting choices that didn't end up working out that might be interesting for our audience to know?
well, Zac Efron was originally attached, and then, no,
I'm
not sure I had to go with me, no.
No, that's not true. Thomas was our very first choice. You were the first actor we went to.
Oh.
Let me think. Other cameos or well, at one time we were the part of the stepmother in the movie, our evil stepmother who's dressed up as the witch. For a while, I was holding out for, this or that person. And at one time, I'm unapologetically huge fan of and part of the phenomenon of Showgirls, the movie. So at one time I was really trying to convince the producers that we needed to make an offer to Gina Gershon. And so, it was one of those things where it was getting down to the wire, and I ended up sitting in local San Francisco auditions for all different parts, and Julie Caitlin Brown walked in, and I was immediately mesmerized, and she read the scene, and I was like, oh my God, well, whatever. I don't, I don't need it to be a cameo, you know what I mean? But at one time I had thought that would be a cameo of like someone you would recognize as as Crystal Connors or whoever,
She's one of my favorite roles. It really reminded me of the mom from Sleepaway Camp. Was that intentional or was that all in my head?
Yes. Oh my God, you're so right.
Do you mean Aunt Martha?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I was obsessed with Sleepaway Camp, and the Aunt Martha character. Yeah, probably. I mean, I watch a lot of movies now, and especially having some distance between the time we've made the movie, like because of Shudder. I recently watched Popcorn and was like, oh, as a creative person, you don't realize sometimes that you're not intentionally stealing from something, but like some of my references, quote unquote references, are completely lifted from things I saw as a kid, that I was in love with. But you obviously put it in your brain and you spit it back out. So yeah, probably Aunt Martha was there somewhere.
I love that. Something that struck me was, I guess this came out a little bit before the found footage phenomenon, but you have it here and you call it a surveillance slasher. Was that on purpose or was that pre-found footage?
That's a good question. I mean, as far as the phenomenon goes, I guess you're right. And I made a short version of this where this is what happens in the short film. So God, we might have been really ahead of our time, because that movie, that short version of the film came out in 2002 or something. So yeah, I guess so. Maybe we were.
Paranormal Activity came out the year we made it.
Right.
Like a few months after.
Pretty crazy. Thomas, who's a scarier foe, Deborah or Freddy?
Which Freddy?
You decide.
Deborah.
She's freaky. Yeah. If you were to make a sequel, would Deborah come back or would it be a totally new story at the theater?
Well, it actually is something I've thought a lot about, and I developed a treatment for something that's a different. It's in the same universe as All About Evil, and it actually is. I don't know what you would call it. It's not a sequel, but it would be called The Three Faces of Evil, and it's very much the same world, and it takes place in a church. But,
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to know more. I hope that happens at some point.
Me too.
Other than that film, if you got to work in a different horror subgenre, what would it be?
Well, I actually, during the pandemic, I had the pleasure of being able to co-write a screenplay that's a weird take on my experiences. So All About Evil in many ways is my experiences running and working and living in movie theaters, which I did. And so I co-wrote a screenplay with Michael Verratti, who I do a podcast with, that's all about building my haunted attractions. So we wrote a screenplay called Terror Vault, and it's more grounded in reality, I think, than All About Evil. And it's about a group of people building a haunted attraction. And of course, the shit
Cool.
hits the fan. Yeah.
Thomas, what's your relationship with horror outside of working in it? Were you always a fan, or was this new to you?
It's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation for me, because I started working in horror as young as 5 years old, but I already, even before 5 years old, my interests were always in the macabre and the dark and the spooky. So horror and just kind of anything really that pushes the envelope, anything that sort of, gives a big middle finger to the norms of everything, has always been my personal passion. And that was why when this opportunity arose at 21 to do this film with Joshua, it was such an exciting thing for me to dive into, because it was kind of the first time I'd done horror, but this was horror mixed with queer film and cult film and John Waters and everything else that I adored. So, yes.
Speaking of John Waters, my education is pretty minimal. If you guys were to give me one or two recommendations, what would it be?
My favorite is the one that nobody ever talks about, but I brought it up to make it, was I Love Desperate Living.
Okay. What's that about? I couldn't tell you.
Desperate Living?
Yeah.
Joshua, you can take that one.
Well, it's John Waters' version of a fairy tale, and so it's very bizarre. This angry angry housewife in suburbia, played by Mink Stoll, basically has a nervous breakdown at the beginning of the film, and she and her house cleaner Griselda basically kill the husband and decide to go on the run. And then they they get harassed by a police officer, and they are driven deeper and deeper into the woods, where they discover a secret town called Mortville.
That's where it all gets really special.
Yeah. Cool.
What about you, Joshua?
I mean, this Joshua?
Yes.
I did think you were talking about me, but of course you're talking about the other one.
I was gonna say, for someone, if you really haven't seen much John Waters, then you absolutely need to see Pink Flamingos.
Yeah. Of course. Camp is not something everybody gets, and I'm wondering if you encountered that on your film festival tour. If you got some strange reactions from people that just don't comprehend the genre.
Yes. I mean, they weren't really strange. It was just more like blatant, dislike. Or, I would say that it was not so coded homophobia in many ways. Like, there wasn't something, no one was talking about queer horror when this movie came out. And, at that point, I had been going to horror conventions as Peaches Christ. I had been doing horror shows as Peaches Christ for like 10 years, and doing stuff with Elvira. But it was so evident to me that there were definitely a lot of gatekeepers who did not want to see this genre world that they loved include us. So I definitely was the recipient of some of that overt resistance. I mean, I don't know if you can find it online, but there was a popular website at the time called fear.net, and that they reviewed the film, and if you read that review, it's basically it might as well be called I don't think gay people should make horror movies. It was just so mean, and it wasn't about the movie. It was really about like we don't like this kind of person making this movie. It was very directed. I don't know that someone would get away with that today as much, but we were definitely testing the waters.
Yeah, I can imagine what that must have been like. If you had the chance to reboot a classic franchise, do you know what you would pick? And actually, I'd like to hear from both of you on this.
Josh, where you go?
No, you go, Thomas. I have to think about that. A classic franchise. Well, they've all been rebooted, haven't they?
We can do it again.
We can do it again. Okay.
Like Halloween 2018.
Well, I mean, let's think. Like Don Mancini is obviously doing a fine job all of his own. Completely amazing.
Yes. I mean, for real. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like a classic franchise to be rebooted. I mean, I wouldn't mind having taking my hand at something like Carrie, or like taking a like,
that's
to
what
me,
I was going to suggest.
yeah, there's sort of like these fables, or these sort of, Carrie now is like, so it's such a fairy tale in so many ways, and to me, like, that is queer horror, Carrie, so like I would, like, why not just make her a trans kid, or like, just go for it, like, just make it a totally queer, and make the religious stuff speak to the queerness of her, and
Yes.
all of that.
Have you seen the 2002 Patricia Clarkson Carrie?
Yes.
With Angela Bettis? Very interesting casting in that
all
one.
the Carries.
Wow, there's plenty of them out there. I have to ask, what was it like acting alongside Natasha Lyonne and also directing her? Because I have to know.
Well, I absolutely felt thrilled that she was going to do the movie, and excited, and of course, meeting her, I found her to be fierce and intimidating and wonderful, and over time, once I realized, like, we were truly kind of bonded, it became a total joy. She really carried the weight of the movie. She understood that the whole kind of movie, or the success of the movie, kind of like landed on her shoulders. And I think she and I both knew that. And so it was my job to, help her along the way as much as possible. And so we very much bonded. Yeah, I just love her. I mean, like, I'm lucky that everyone that worked on this film, I hope, I still consider that they would still consider me a friend. But over the years, Natasha and I have done a number of shows together. Been able to stay close. But nothing would be as intense as that experience of making All About Evil. That was intense. Yeah, she's lovely and amazing, and I couldn't be happier for her. I mean, tremendous success.
And Thomas, what was it like acting alongside?
I felt an instant, like, deep connection to her right out of the gate. Is very rare in my life. I think that we both had been, we'd both been child actors. We just had a lot that we could kind of immediately see and recognize in each other. And she, I think, knew me and understood me better than I did, even at that time. And she kind of became someone in my personal life that I, because I maintained a friendship with Natasha as well ever since the movie. And she's always been someone that I've looked to. She's an icon and someone I look up to and admire, but someone who, as my friend, I also feel very, like, comfortable with, so it's this, and I'm just so thrilled for her. She works really fucking hard, and she's made every one of her successes happen, herself. And, but acting with her in the movie was a joy. It's actually funny because we don't have that many scenes together, really, because we're kind of the two separate sides of the movie. But so most of my time with Natasha was just like hanging out at the Victoria when you guys were lighting or whatever. It was just kind of downtime bonding.
Wonderful. Thanks to both of you for speaking with Dread Central. This was wonderful.
Love Dread Central.
Yeah. Congrats on the release. I'm excited for the world to see it.
I listened to your podcast, Josh. Ever since you had me on it, I listened to Development Hell.
I didn't actually know if you were going to remember me or not.
Oh, of course I do. I listened to your show, and I'm obsessed with the way that you say Development Hell.
I'm dying. I'm dead now. Thank you for killing me.
Good.
That
I'm
makes
glad.
me very happy. Yeah. It was great meeting you both. And
you too.
Again,